Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Lauren Howman. So Lauren and I are part of the same sober coaching group under Chris Shattuck. So out of Freedom from Alcohol and Booze-Free Badasses. Lauren, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better and share our story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what we have in mind for today. It's a wonderful, yeah, exactly. Like you said, a way to get to know each other and then record it and get some content out of it as well. So very cool. I appreciate you taking the time today. So yeah, excellent. I want to, before we get into your story, I just want to know a little bit about what you have going on right now. Like we've been working together for all of maybe like 10 days at this stage of the game. By the way, congratulations on your 3-year anniversary sober birthday a couple days ago. Yeah, raise the roof. So that's literally a couple days ago from time of recording here. So capturing at a really cool time. So just anything you care to share. What's new and exciting in the world of Lauren?
Yeah, well, let's start with family. I'm a mom of 4 boys. They are 23, 9, and 7. I am a new grandma to my first 3-week-old granddaughter. She's in
Very
California.
Cool. Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
so that
exciting.
was fun. I got to fly out there. San Diego is never a bad place to fly to.
Right.
From
Beautiful.
Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. And so I've got the 4 boys. I'm married. I have a dog who's also a boy. I've got the granddaughter. I do a lot of stuff for work, and I love it. I have a bit much of ADHD. And so just kind of doing a little bit of each thing has just been like the most fun thing for me in the world. So I used to work full-time as a nurse practitioner in women's health, 9 to 5, couple Saturdays here and there. About 3 years ago, I took a step away from that and came home during the middle of COVID because my kids didn't have school and we were really struggling to figure out where to put them, because when they closed the schools down, they also closed down daycares. So I came home, and I do have a coaching business with wellness and health. I help people get healthy and lose weight, come off medications, things like that. So that's what I transitioned into a couple of years ago when I came home from work. And so now I continue to do that. I obviously hooked up with Chris, and then that's how you and I met. And I now am a sober coach since January. Freaking love it. It is really cool to kind of watch other people who were hopeless like myself find hope, find a new life. And my life looks 100,000 ways different than it used to when I was a drinker. So, but for work, what do I do? During the day, I'm just mom. And that's a big job. So I'm running around with kids during the summer. I work at the hospital about once a week delivering babies as a labor and delivery mother baby nurse. And I work at the school about once a month when school is in. I fill in for the school nurses who need a day off, which is so fun. My kids go there. And, so the pay is not even worth putting your shoes on as a school nurse. It's not even worth the dress, but it's fun. My kids come and eat lunch with me, and it's a great time. And so, of course, the sober coaching, and I also do PSYCH-K as a service to help others live a better life. And we can chat on that a little later, because I know you're not super familiar with that.
Yeah, definitely want to get into that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great way to just facilitate change fast by helping people get unstuck in their belief system. The beliefs that we have about ourselves creates the life that we live. So if we want to live a better life, we have to have better beliefs about all of the things.
I love all of that. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, you have many things going on, and what a story. I definitely want to, get back into it. Just so 23 and 23. So do you have twin boys?
Yes.
Okay. Are they identical twins?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Both boys, one is darker hair, brunette, one is completely blonde.
Isn't that funny, right? Yeah. Funny how that works out. And so I apologize. The other 2 ages, it was 23, 23.
9 and 7.
9 and 7. Okay. So you got a couple of the youngsters there on summer vacation now, as you mentioned, right? So yes, I imagine never a dull moment over in your household.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the way we do it is with my coaching. I just work at night because I can just hang with them all day, and there's nothing, any of the moms that listen in or watch this YouTube, if you're trying to work from home and do kids, you're going to hate everything about everything.
Right.
You just can't do it all because the kids need you. Yeah. It's not their fault that they're hungry for the 80th time, even though you just fed them. They're going to want to eat again. They need help sometimes. They get injured every time you pick up a phone to have a conversation. So it's like,
just plan for it.
Yeah.
I love that. Question for you that comes up right away. And I know anytime your importance with health and wellness and such, How and when do you find your sleep? You know, like do you take some naps here and there? Like how are you as a sleeper, and how are you for like resting and relaxing and such?
I love my sleep. My kids will
Okay.
tell me it's my favorite thing to do. What's mommy's favorite thing? Sleep. Absolutely.
Okay.
If they could understand that they'll love it too, one day life would be much better because they'd stay there both in bed in the morning. But I try to go to bed at a decent time at night. I do have a nighttime routine that I get into, and meditation is something that I've been into for about the last year and a half, and I've really kicked that up. Because as far as rest and restoration and relaxation go, meditation goes a long way. So I try to meditate 20 minutes twice a day. And I do take naps when my kids aren't here. So about once a week, it's very luxurious to like schedule a nap on my calendar when the kids
Yes.
are in school. Heck
I
yeah.
love that. I love that.
I do those long naps. Like I'm not a 20-minute power snoozer. I'm like, I need 2 hours at
Yeah.
least. Yeah.
Yes.
If
I
I'm
love how
going to
you
sleep,
schedule it. Oh,
yeah,
it's
in my calendar,
yes.
like in bold,
I
like
love
it's not
that.
movable. Like we're not
Yes.
doing calls, we're not doing
Yeah.
coaching, we're doing self-care, and that means
Yes.
NAP. Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, that's one of the first things that I learned, like getting into just entrepreneurship, is like, if you don't schedule yourself and your own self-care, it's just going to get marginalized. And then you're doing this whole thing that I was trying to get away from, the whole grind and whatnot, you know, this idea of like freedom and entrepreneurship and such. The only way that you're ever going to get that is by scheduling time for yourself, scheduling a nap. So I really love how you do that, and you shared that. So thank you.
As an entrepreneur, if you don't make time for those things, you won't have time
Yeah.
for them, because you will work
Yeah.
around the clock because it's your passion
100%.
and you're excited.
Yeah,
And even when you're not working, you're working up here, like, oh, I could do this
exactly.
for YouTube or Facebook, or here's a great idea for content. And you're
Yeah.
constantly going back and forth. So I schedule all the things.
That's brilliant. Thanks. That's very important that you shared that. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'd love to actually just go back in time now. And, you know, so we have like everything that you got going on now, but what brought you to the stage that you're? I've seen some of your transformational photographs of yourself. So I know that you were, in fact, I imagine the first guinea pig was yourself, as far as like you finding what worked for you. And I'd love to hear your story. So as far back as you care to go, you can go back to childhood, teenage years, just your whole, any challenges that you had, and how you handled it, and what brought you into who you are today.
Sure, absolutely. So I think the first thing is to say my parents weren't drinkers, which is interesting because I think a lot of people get into the path of drinking and then abusing the drug because they saw it at such a young age, and it was being, put up on a pedestal as this elixir that was magical and had unicorn rainbows and glitter in it. Everybody was, partying with it, and it looked like it was a must have. I didn't have that. But I started kind of tinkering with alcohol around 15, 16, got drunk a few times and didn't love it. And then we got into the partying years for college, and that was more like the binge drinking once a week that we all did. Not to make myself feel better or rationalize, but we were all going out getting hammered and then spending Saturday and Sunday recovering, or maybe even Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday was recovery day so that we could get back to school and work and all of those things. So I feel like I was a pretty normal drinker during those years. And after college, I didn't have my kids until late. So my first child of my own was 35. So my two twins are not of my uterus. They came from my husband's first marriage. And I came into the picture when they were 2. So I claimed them, but I guess, for the timeline, it's good to say that I did not birth these children out of my own uterus. So I had my kids a little bit later. And so it was just my husband and I, and then the 2 older kids sometimes back and forth between our house and their mom's house. And so I could drink whenever. And I just started to notice, I don't know when it happened, but I just started drinking more and more and then bringing it home. So it would be like, we would be out partying, and then we got a little older, and then we just started drinking at home. And so then it was like a Thursday, Friday, and then it was like, oh, we had a rough day, I'm gonna have a bottle of wine. Husband was back in school taking some night classes, I'm going to drink on those nights. And it just became a thing. And I don't know when I slid into actual what I would call addiction, because I didn't notice it at the time.
Right.
Of course, we think we can quit because we've never been challenged to quit. So it's like, oh yeah, I could take it or leave it at any time. But I knew for a good, I would say 20 years that I had a problem.
Wow.
Well, let's see. No, I'm too young for that. That's way off. Probably about 10 years.
Yeah.
because when I had my children, so the first child was born at 35, I didn't have a lot of drinking in between then and the next child because I was pregnant, I was nursing, and then we got pregnant again, and then I was pregnant and then nursing. So I would say it just really kicked up after that second child, when I was free to drink again, really, and drink to my heart's desire, because I wasn't, trying to get pregnant. I wasn't breastfeeding anymore, and we were done with children. So at that point, I just started to notice that there was a need. And I was starting to do all of the things that we hear about with our coaching. And when we talk to other sober folks or people who are trying to quit alcohol, I would tell myself, no alcohol tonight. And then I would stop on the way home. I would start rationalizing it and saying, it wouldn't hurt. I won't drink the next day. Or I would go 2 or 3 days without and feel like that was like some big cause for celebration.
Right.
And of course I don't have a problem if I went 2-3 days without. So let's go pick some up. But there were signs. Number one, I couldn't keep alcohol in the house because if it was here, I was going to drink it.
Right.
So it seemed that there was this unspoken rule between my husband and I. My husband is not a drinker. He drinks a little, and now he doesn't drink at all now that I don't. There was some unspoken rule that 1 bottle of wine was okay, but any more than that was not okay. So I had this 1 bottle rule. So if I had 2 bottles, I was going to get into both of them.
Yeah, right.
And so I had to go to the store each day that I wanted to drink. Right. So there were signs. I knew something was going on. I wasn't ready to admit it to myself. I had started to do really stupid things. And again, these are the things that we all think are very individual to us as drinkers, and they're not. Like the rationalization. I remember you telling your part about walking past the liquor stores, and by the time you get the third one, you're like, this is a great idea. Let's go do this.
Right. Yeah.
I've got this. This is awesome. And we do those things. I remember getting sick and somebody recommended that I have a hot toddy, and I don't do liquor. I was a wine person. I was known for my wine. It was like half of my personality. Somebody recommended I do a hot toddy, and I realized it tasted like crap, but it did help with my symptoms. I wasn't drinking because I was sick, but I had this little hot toddy, and the next night I had 2 of them. And then I started using those little airplane bottles to supplement my wine drinking so I could have more with no one knowing. And so I was, hiding tiny bottles. And then that led to being able to hide entire bottles of wine, because some bottles don't need a cork. You don't have to open them in the kitchen.
Right.
So we make wine in these little cartons that's like a 3/4 bottle, and it has a screw top. And so I could have that in my dresser and just come in my bedroom, take a big gulp, and then go about my business. So I'm supplementing my own drinking and nobody knows it.
Right.
Because I know that my husband's very laid back. He would have been like, oh, okay, what is happening here? So I knew there was a problem. It was getting progressively worse. I was breaking all of my own rules. I had done a couple things that led me to believe. One of my sober clients actually said this recently, and I'm like, you just pegged it. You just hammered the nail on the head here. She said, I knew if I didn't stop, I was going to do something dangerous because I was breaking all of my rules. So when you have young kids, she has a 5 or 6-year-old. I think he just turned 6. She wouldn't drink and drive with him in the car, but she knew if she continued on the path that eventually she was going to rationalize to herself, well, I could have 1 before I pick him up from daycare. And then that's going to be 2 the next week because we do this thing where we say, well, 1 wasn't bad and I wasn't drunk at all. I wasn't tipsy at all. So 2 should be fine. And if it's not fine, then I'll tell my husband to pick up the kid. 2 works out beautifully for you. You go pick up your kid. And then next thing you know, you're drinking all the time while you're driving. Right. So that's why she quit, because she was like, I knew that's where I was going to head, and I was going to end up doing something dangerous. I had always been a good parent. Parenting is what I wanted. I mean, I did IVF to get pregnant with my 2 children. So it was not a small expense, let's say. And I wasn't showing up for them properly. I was drinking to excess in front of them, never without my husband home, because I wanted to make sure that they were safe. So if I was drinking, he needed to be home so that I could really do it the way I wanted to do it. But also, so if somebody fell and broke their leg, we could still get to the ER. But how long would it have been? And I love what my client said. How long would it have been before I was just straight drinking through the day, taking care of them on a summer day like today, drunk by the time my husband showed up, and needing to go take a nap. And that's just not the life I wanted. And I knew that I was progressing. I was progressing along the path, finding other things to supplement the amount that was acceptable for me to have.
Right.
Including Xanax. And that's a very scary combination.
Sure. I can imagine. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing all that. And it's a great time to pause. And it's like getting into, okay, what changed things for you and how did you change as such? So let's pause it right there. And there's a couple things, so relatable, right? It's like you mentioned some of the same kind of topics that show up in other people's stories. And we believe that it's like unique to us, right? And sure, there's some nuances that are different from person to person, depending on environment, depending on, family history and these types of things. But some of these broad strokes are just so common in everybody, right? Like the rationalization. And as soon as you're talking about, I'm like, yeah, like we have that like overactive part of our brains, right? That's like, convincing and, so opportunistic. And yeah, so when you're saying that, I'm like, oh, yeah, really resonated with me. And I mean, a laugh, but it's kind of sad as well. The whole like, celebrating after 3 days. I used to do that too. I'd have the plan to do the full week or whatever, 21 days. I have these, and 3 days in, I'm like, see, I got this 3 days. And then how do you celebrate 3 days sober? Well, you have to drink, clearly, right? So both of those really stood out to me. I'm like, yeah, that's me. So thanks for sharing all of that. It's very important. And I love just the honesty and I love the thought pattern. So you've really painted the picture as far as like you've gotten up to the stage where it's kind of, okay, you're going to go one way or the other. So was there anything that happened that was sort of what you call a rock bottom moment, or was that, as you described it, sort of you got some clarity from that thought pattern that you just discussed?
Just like everybody else, I did stupid stuff when I was drunk. So even if it was okay, the worst would always, not the worst. There was one thing I did one time that was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed for myself even now. But the worst things would be like, you'd wake up the next day truly sick and you look at your husband and you're like, am I in trouble? Did I do anything wrong last night? Did I say anything? And did I hurt your feelings?
Yeah.
All of those things, like when your guard is down, it's like, oh, no inhibitions. Everybody thinks that's so cool. It's not really all that cool. It's not very safe for you to not have inhibitions. Like,
Right.
I always see people trying to jump building to building when they're drunk because they think that they can do it.
Right.
But for my relationships, it was like, yes, things happened, and it was, because of the drinking. That's not my personality. It's not who I am. It's not how I treat people. But I would say things, I would do things, I would get out of control. I would have too much. And so I didn't love that. But no rock bottom. I was completely functional. I think probably in all of the years as a nurse practitioner and a nurse, I called in like twice.
Wow. Yeah.
But I went to work feeling like death a few times.
Yeah.
Rough stuff, man. Like, just thought I was going to die. And I had to bring all the stuff with me, like mountains and mountains of like Coke or Mountain Dew or something that just has like the sugar and the energy and the, you got to get the greasy goodness going, some kind of food to get in your stomach. Like, as you're dying, you're poisoned.
Yeah.
So it was more of an issue. So I'll tell you what happened that made me think, okay, this has got to go, because I started breaking rules in my coaching business. So in my coaching, I was coaching health and wellness, helping people lose weight, come off medications, live a better life. And so I was working 9 to 5 as a nurse practitioner. I'd come home, I'd do the babies for a while. They were younger, 3 and 5-ish maybe. And then I would start the drinking right away, but I always had to keep it to a minimum because I had to get on the phone later to grow my business. My goal was to grow this business big enough so I could come home to be with the boys, which I did. But what started happening was I would get on the phone. And by the way, at this point, I'd switched to beer because that was going to be better for me. You know the story, because that's in yours too. I decided that I couldn't be trusted around wine, but beer would be just fine.
Of course.
Beer would be great. So I started buying this really fun, stupid beer, not fun, but like they always have fun names like Fat Can or Fat, I don't know, just the ales, the IPAs or IGAs. I can't remember. IPAs?
Yeah, IPAs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And what I learned very quickly in buying them for my husband was that those bad boys have really high percentages. So you can get like a 14% beer or 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that would knock me out. Like I would be feeling the buzz very quickly. And then very shortly after that, one beer later, I was like slam drunk. And I was surprised by that because, Miller Lite is water. And that's what I was used to. Miller Lite, Bud Light, all that stuff. But anyway,
totally.
So I switched over to beer drinking. And I would be like on my last call of the night and I'd crack open a beer. And that way I could start getting my buzz. Because, we do all these things for timing. We want to get the most bang for our buck. We want to time our beers and our drinks and whatever we're drinking to get the maximum effect for our buzz before we need to go to bed and be responsible humans again.
Totally.
So I would start drinking one of those beers and kind of slam it while I was on my last phone call. And by the time I hung up with that person, I'd be a little buzzed. I'd have the second one, I'd have the third, whatever it was going to be. But I started backing that up to where I'd be drinking on the phone calls.
Mm,
And I
mhm,
remember one night canceling like 5 calls in a row. They were just short, like 10-minute check-in calls to check on my
mm,
clients. I had to cancel like 5 of them that were like back to back in an hour space because I was drunk. And
mm,
as soon as I recognized I was drunk, I was like, oh, we can't do this. Like, we are not going to be this person
mm,
who
mhm.
is coaching health and wellness drunk.
Yeah,
And
right.
you only know you're drunk because you're starting to realize that you're over enunciating, you're
Yeah.
slowing down your speech so that you're not slurring, all of those
Mm,
things.
mhm.
And so I did that a few times, had to cancel calls, kind of pressed my luck with it. Like, how far can I go before I can't do this? And it was like, look, okay, the evidence is piling up here, girlfriend. Like, seriously, you are a smart person, you are accomplished, you do a lot of cool shit, but this has got you by the neck, by the throat,
Mhm.
whatever. I was
Yeah.
gonna say by the balls, but I don't own a pair of those. But
Yeah.
metaphorically, it had me by the balls.
Metaphorically, yes.
Yeah. And so I knew that if I wanted to grow my business, it had to go because I only had a certain amount of time to drink and grow my business, and they were conflicting time
Yeah,
period. I
totally.
also knew that with my children, I was really going to mess it up. And I also knew that I was going to do something stupid enough eventually where my husband was just like, I don't know if he just thought I was going to figure it out or if he was turning a blind eye because he didn't want to see it or if he just didn't
Mm,
know what I was doing.
sure.
Um, and I knew though that he was just going to drop the ball on me one day and be like, we're out. Like, I'm taking the kids, we're packing up because you've done something really stupid
Right,
and we can't be in this environment. Like, you can't put us at risk that way as far as the
right,
kids go.
right.
I think he was willing to tolerate me being a hot mess, but not where it comes in with the kids. And I knew eventually he was going to be like,
Yeah,
okay, I saw that. What was
right,
that? You know?
right, right.
So those are kind of the two reasons I wanted to be the mom I wanted to be, and I wanted to grow this business. And I knew that none of that could happen. Like, listen, there are no successful people out there that are poisoning themselves on a nightly basis with alcohol or
Yeah,
other drugs. They're
fair
not
point.
doing it.
Mhm.
You can't be successful and you can't have this part of you that's, and functional alcoholics, yes, for a time, but you will not be functional in the end. You will end up in a big mess that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
functioning anymore. And I see it with our clients. I see it, because they come in from all different places. Some of them
Mhm.
have lost jobs, they have lost
Yeah,
spouses, loved ones.
yes.
But that's where we would all go if we don't stop. So it's not that I'm better than anybody else. It's just that I
Mhm.
stopped a little sooner.
Right.
So I made the decision. And I remember we went to B-dubs on Buffalo Wild Wings on a Saturday or Sunday. And I had just made the decision and I ordered a pink lemonade. And my husband was like, what are you doing there? Because that's not you. We find
Yeah.
every excuse to drink. So if you're going to a restaurant, that's 2 glasses of wine.
Right.
And then I can have an excuse to stop at the gas station on the way home
Yeah, yeah,
and I can get another bottle and we can just keep the party going. So he was like, what do
sure.
you mean? And I'm like, I'm done. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, not drinking anymore. I'm done. I am
Mm.
done. And he was like, oh, okay, you're right. And then
Wow.
that was the end of it. He
That
didn't
was the
say
end of it.
it was the end of it. He didn't
Wow.
say like, oh yeah, right.
Sure.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm sure he was thinking it like,
Sure.
we'll see how long this lasts. Cause I'd said it
Yeah.
before,
Okay.
and totally went back to drinking 3-4 days later.
Right.
But that was the end of it. And honestly, there's more to the story. And the only back piece of the story was that I started listening to Craig Beck on YouTube about 2 years
Mm,
prior,
sure. Yeah.
off and on. When I would
Yeah.
hit my lows where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such a loser. Why am I doing this to myself? I would
Yeah.
listen to Craig Beck and be like, yeah, yeah. And I'd get myself
Yeah.
all pumped up.
Totally.
And then I would go back to drinking. And then another event would happen where I'd be like, oh my gosh, I got to stop. And I'd go listen to Craig. And eventually it just kicked in. And he used to have a lot more content on YouTube than he does now. But it's still there. And he's got a book. And really that book is everything you need. But so the backside, I was already reprogramming. And one day it just clicked and I'm like, I'm freaking done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was
Very
3 years
cool.
ago. So
Yeah,
if you,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, a
I
few
love
days
that.
later, we were at Buffalo Wild Wings again. My dad was visiting from Virginia. And
Nice.
I ordered another one and took a picture of it. And it was actually
Yes.
on the 3-year anniversary. And I'm like, we're still going strong with these strawberry
So
lemonade.
cool. Exactly. That's the new drink of choice as far as with Buffalo Wild Wings anyways. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, such a cool story. Such a cool story. I love that. Yeah. And it's so neat that we are connecting so close to your 3-year day and how that's part of your story and what you're talking about. So congratulations. What a great story it is. And I just love the ability for you to course correct and just see, okay, this is, because it's such a sly, insidious, thing, this alcohol, isn't it? And it's like, and before you know it, like, as you mentioned, the evidence is piling against you and you had enough of that awareness. And, Craig Beck is amazing. That's another thing that you and I have in common. He was my first quit lit sort of author or publisher, presenter. So his hypnotherapy tracks, and one of his books, I forget, the one that has like the bullet on the cover
Oh
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, that one was big for me. And I kind of went from there. So he was my gateway into just the alternate way of thinking about drinking, right? So another thing we share in common. I know that's what you're doing in the book club right now in the group. Are you? Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's very cool. Awesome. Yeah, I love that. So since then, what are some of these like reflections that you've had, 3 years? Like what were some of the biggest challenges initially? Were there like we talked about the pink cloud? Was it all like, pink lemonade cloud, we'll call it, the first few months? It was great. Like how walk us into like what these last 3 years have looked like for you.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any like one path that people take. And I think my path was one of the easier ones, honestly, because I was so done with myself. I had a lot of time to think about it, like 2 years of just, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so, Craig Beck, the reason I love him so much is because he just calls the bullshit on the alcohol. Alcohol has no benefits. And I perceived a lot of benefits. I thought it was my best friend. I thought it helped me be the person I could be at parties, and, social anxiety and things of that nature. Alcohol helped me with all of those things, I thought. And so just really breaking down what all those lies were, by the time I got to that quit date where I was like, I'm freaking done, I was really solid on that. And I think a lot of our clients are not solid there yet. They've just kind of raised their hands and they're like, I'm ready, but they don't have any of that history behind them. So I think that gave me kind of like a one up on people. It was weird. It was in the middle of summer and we have a big pool in the backyard. We host all of the summertime events for all of our family that lives close by. There's always people over, and I use those events every time to get wasted, right? Like while I was in the kitchen making the food, I was drinking wine before everybody got there. I'd go back in to get more wine, and I'd be carrying it around in a cup that didn't make sense, that wasn't a wine glass,
Yeah.
And then I would be trying to walk around like I wasn't drunk, doing what I call my special walk. That's like me trying to walk straight, but probably looks really, really ridiculous to the sober people in the room. Like, what is she doing? Like, is she hallucinating?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I really thought that the first, couple months would be really tough with all of those pool events and just summer and just all the things that we do, but it wasn't. And I found really quickly the benefits way overpowered any of the perceived negatives that I thought were going to be. So like that very first event, it was actually really cool because I was engaged in the conversations. I wasn't doing this stupid thing where I'm drunk and now I have to pretend that I'm not drunk. Like, where is the brain cells? What's going on in there when we do that? Why do we want to get so hammered and then have to pretend that we're not? That is miserable. So I would be doing the whole dance, but also going back to make sure I maintained a certain level of drunkenness, right? Because we don't like it when it starts to fall. And then we're getting tired and like, oh, we're going to pass out and we need to keep it going because we've still got people here and it's only 3:00 in the afternoon, right?
Right.
But honestly, they went off great. And I really love not dealing with all of that stuff. And the people that were over for that very first event were my husband's family. And honestly, it was great. It was way better than it had been every other time when I was drinking. And so from there, that gave me a little bit of like, okay, this is going to be all right. And it was. I've gone to many events. And what's funny is that I go to a lot of events where there's open bars. I could pour you a glass of wine if you wanted me to, because I don't want it anymore. So if you need it, if you want me to get you a glass of wine and you don't want to go and wait in the line, I could do it for you. It doesn't bother me. I hate the smell of it now. It makes me nauseous. But I can be around drinkers. And one of the things that I always tell like our group with coaching is that people think I am drinking, and it's not because I'm trying to mimic a drinker. It's because I'm having a good time, and people see my ability to just be myself and get loose and dance, even though I'm terrible at it, and having fun and conversing with people. They think I'm drinking because they think that that behavior only comes from getting a little bit lubricated with alcohol. So I was at this big event in Hawaii where there were 100 women health coaches at this beautiful resort that was like 8 acres. It had an open bar. There was like fire throwers and dancing and karaoke and just like a live band and all this stuff going on. And the next time all those people saw me, they were like offering me a drink. And I'm like, no, I don't drink. And they're like, yeah, you do. And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, well, you were drinking in Hawaii. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. And they were just shocked. So that furthers the message of we really don't need this stuff to have like a banging kick butt time in Maui or in your backyard. If other people want to drink, that's great. I don't want to be around people who are hammered because it's obnoxious, honestly. And I was obnoxious too. I'm not, so I'll give grace around that, but I was very obnoxious. But it's just not something I want anymore. And I think that's why you came into our group as well, is because you, in your story and in Chris's story with, you know, our Freedom from Alcohol coaching program, it's not about white knuckling and saying, I can't have this beautiful elixir, which is just Gatorade, but I can't have this because I'm too weak. And if I have one, I'll have 100. I can't do that. It's like, ooh, no, this is poison. I don't want it.
Right.
Ew,
Completely
no,
different
you
mindset.
go ahead. Yeah. But I'm able to say like, oh, no, thank you. Move on. Have a great time. In the back of my head, I'm not playing those mental gymnastics anymore. Well, should I have one? I could have one. Well, shit, in 3 years, I could probably have one. I'm cured. You know, I could have one and then I'll start over tomorrow. All the mental gymnastics, I just get to go and engage and be present. And that's what we want for our clients. And I think that's why you're here with us now, is because the old way is the white knuckling. I am miserable. I want my best friend back. I cannot have her, that glorious glass of wine, because I'm too weak and I'm broken.
Totally.
No, it's poison.
It's like,
and even if you're an occasional drinker, that doesn't make it good for you. It's still poison. You're just not drinking enough of it to be problematic.
And isn't it interesting? It's like, that's really like the flavor of the day right now. It's like the Huberman Lab podcast was like a groundbreaker. I think it was last summer, the end of last summer. So that's been out for 8 or 10 months now. And, you know, all these like, you know, myths about like, oh, you know, a couple glasses of wine is actually good for you. And it's like, it's getting proven. All these like myths are just getting disproven now. And like, you know, probably have been for a while, but now very much becoming mainstream. And you're hearing, you know, people that aren't necessarily like at rock bottom. You hear about these like sober, curious people that are just realizing it's not serving them. Even 4 drinks a week is not serving you. Even 1 drink a week is not serving you. Right. So that's it's so rewarding to be a part of that, like uprising of people coming to terms with that. There's just people that are just interested. I'm sure, you know, from the health and wellness background, just people that are interested in living the healthiest life that they can and realizing that there's no room for alcohol. And that's, so that isn't the stereotype of the person that's hit the rock bottom and lost their job and lost their family and all that. There's like so much gray area in there now. And you know, and the people that we're working with them and so forth. So yeah, really cool stuff that you brought up there. I love talking about this stuff. So we can, you know,
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. It's a passion.
Yes, absolutely. And you can tell. I want to get into this. So PSYCH-K. So this is something that you've recently picked up, and you hinted at it at the beginning of the interview. So let's do a little bit of a dive in that. Just a little summary, like you kind of give a little hint of it, but I'd love it if you unpack that a little bit, please.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll start by saying that I didn't know what PSYCH-K was. It's been around for about 30 years. Back in like 2018, a friend of mine had become certified in it. And I was like, cool, let's do this. I'll be a guinea pig for you. And it freaking changed my life. It just changed my life. So what it's all about, and I'll kind of share that story and then talk about how we use it now. I was like, sure, Will, I'll be your guinea pig. Let's do this. And just a Zoom, me and him. And he asked me to think of any like kind of, where do you feel stuck? And could they be related to some beliefs that you have in your head that are subconscious that you weren't even in charge of these beliefs. Like a lot of our subconscious mind beliefs are formed by the time we're 5, 7 years old, and they come from our parents. So if you have a money mindset problem, it might be because your parents always said things like money's hard to come by, or we have to work hard for our money. You have to go to college. You have to do it this way. You know, this is how we make money. And then you're going to work really hard. You're going to retire. And then you're going to sell your home and downsize because you're not going to have enough money. And so you can see that those people have these beliefs about money in their head that are going to play out in their lives. So you're going to find ways to be broke. You're going to find a way for money to be really hard to come by. You're going to find ways to not be able to afford the things that you think you want because money's hard to come by. We can't afford that. And these are not even your own beliefs, and your parents didn't do this to you on purpose. It's just how life goes. They get passed along. And then you've got this program running in your mind. So your subconscious brain actually takes care of us 95 to 99% of the time. 1% of the time is our conscious mind, which is a very slow processor, and it doesn't do a whole lot at one time. But if we're using our conscious mind to focus on the past or the present, the past or the future, which is pretty much what we do all day long. We're thinking about where we have to be next, or reminiscing back on what happened yesterday or 10 years ago. then the subconscious mind picks up the slack and takes care of everything else. It makes sure that you breathe, make sure that your heart's beating. And it gets you home on those days when you are like, wow, how did I get here? I just drove 20 minutes and I wasn't even here, because you were daydreaming off in the over here, and your subconscious got you home safely because it knew what to do. It had the program to run to say, here's where Lauren works, here's where Lauren's home is, let's get her there safely. And so 99 to 95% of the time, your subconscious is taking care of you. So if you've got bad programming, we're going to have a life that reflects those things.
Right.
So very interesting, very cool. And I know that you're into this stuff, and I can't wait to hear more about your storybook work too.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we want to have a great life, we have to replace that programming. And so PSYCH-K comes in, and it uses very non-invasive methods, just Zoom calls with 2 people. You can do them in person. I do them with Zoom calls because that's just more feasible.
Yeah.
And we pluck out those programs and we replace them with programs that work. So if you are having a money mindset problem, this is one of the ones I did the second time. I couldn't bust through the barrier of where I was earning in my business. It was just stuck. And I knew, I'm like, why am I not moving? It's because I had a money mindset belief that was holding me back, and I was sabotaging myself.
Yeah.
So if a certain amount of money came in, I had to spend it to make my subconscious beliefs correct. Right.
Yeah.
And so I got to bust through that. And then very quickly my income went whoop, and I was able to retire from my nurse practitioner 9 to 5. And my business just kept getting better and better in that aspect. And not a whole lot more work happened either. So it was really just mindset.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But the very first thing that made me know, like, I had this on my bucket list to get trained in this for years and years because it was so impactful. The first thing I said, I just want to have my subconscious believe that I am free to be who I am. I'm free to be me. And that encompasses a large umbrella of stuff. But as women, we are told to not dress this way, not behave this way, don't be too loud, don't talk too fast, don't talk too much. Those are all things that I'm pretty good at doing: talking fast, talking loud, talking all the time. Be small. You know, fit yourself into this small container. And I noticed that the social contracts that I had running at the time were enabling that as well. So I'd almost signed social contracts with everybody in my life that I was keeping myself small because that's what I agreed to in that relationship. And with my mom, with my husband, with everybody. And I was like, but that's not who I am. Like, I'm a badass. I'm a person who takes charge. I'm like, I have really creative ideas. I want to do all these things, but I keep being told no, because that's not my space or not my place. I don't get to take up that place. So in this first thing, it was just, I am free to be who I am. And I did that. And I, like, who was I the next day? People were like, what is she up to? It worked that quickly. My husband started noticing things. I started dressing a little bit differently, carrying myself differently, behaving differently, talking differently, just free to be me, whatever that meant that day. And I knew that I wanted to kind of just like, I needed to be trained in this so I could help other people. And so with that being said, the sessions only take an hour. It's really affordable. And we work on things from self-esteem, your personal power. We work on spirituality. We can work on health and wellness. I help the Booze Free Badasses, our clients. I help them with their alcohol beliefs, because even if we're drilling into you, like, alcohol has no benefits, you know, sometimes it's just that one thing that's holding them back. And they're like, I really do think it helps me with A, B, or C. Well, we can go into the subconscious and get rid of that. So they're not reaching for that beer to help them with their social anxiety.
Exactly.
And put a new program in there that actually says, like, I'm able to function in society, in social environments without alcohol, and actually do a better job without it. So it's really cool. So I'm using that with the sober clients, but I'm also using it to the general public as well. And I'll share that link with you. It's really affordable. It's like $100 an hour.
For
to do that,
to change your life in an hour, right? Literally.
And it's very similar. If people know about hypnosis, it's very similar to hypnosis, but it's a lot faster.
Wow. Very interesting. So cool. So basically it's a Zoom call, and it's like, is it a matter of, it's sort of like talk like where hypnosis would be like power of suggestion and you're listening. It's almost like, for me, it was a deep meditation, but for this, there's an actual like back and forth dialogue and an investigation of a certain belief. Is that sort of a good summary? Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So we would kind of sit and figure out what's going on. So you're like, hey, I can't bust through this I always use finances because everybody can relate to it. I cannot bust through this of 8K a month. I'm making 8K a month. The people around me that have been doing it as long as me, they're making 10K. And I know that I could be that person too, but I believe that there's something holding me back.
Yes.
So we would kind of investigate, talk back and forth. And then once we got it down to like, what is that belief that's holding you back? We can write a new belief together.
That's so cool. And with that new belief, does that then become like a, daily affirmation, for example, or something? Or how does that sort of show up for you? Or is it just,
it's set it and forget it. It's like that commercial with the, I don't know, Canada, if you know it, but that like set it and forget it with the rotisserie chicken.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, and the whole audience is like, set it and forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Once your subconscious believes it, you don't have to keep affirming to yourself that like, hey, my lungs breathe effortlly every day.
Sure.
You don't have to continue to like affirm that. It just happens.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. I'm having some ideas. We'll talk about this after we cancel the recording. I have some cool ideas for this. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So, as we wind things down here, is there anything else? Like I want to, just, I guess, client wins. You've been doing this since the January, you said, now with the Freedom from Alcohol program. Are you still doing the health and wellness component as well? I imagine you have a client base that you've built up over the years that you're still working with. Yeah. So how is that looking? What would you say? Are you future plans? Are you going to be doing both? Are you more or less focused on one or the other? What is your future as far as coaching,
I think I'll be mainly sober coaching because the passion is just there for it. And but my clientele with health and wellness, obviously I love them and I'm staying with that, but I'm not like really pushing for it anymore.
Gotcha.
It's a very solid business that pays me very well to continue, but I don't need to like hustle and grind 24/7 to make it happen. So that will be doing its thing with me at the helm. Sober coaching, I love, and I'll be here. So working with Chris and working with you. I do put out content on TikTok about alcohol when I'm feeling it, but I'm ADHD, so I only do creative work when I'm feeling creative. Like it's just how I am. I get to do what I want there. But so I see sober coaching for the long term because I didn't even know how healing it would be for me. And maybe you've experienced this now too.
100%.
I did it on my own. So then coming into this group of like all these amazing people who are working it out for themselves, and then Chris and you and hearing your stories, it's very healing for me to be able to be around people that get it and don't look at you like you have 15 eyeballs across your forehead. Because they're like, you did what? That's nuts, Lauren. Well, it is nuts, but like, I know that you did some of it and I know that she did some of it. And if they didn't do the exact same thing, it was pretty damn close.
Yeah. That was the most rewarding part for me is when I went to my first AA meeting and just realizing before I'd even heard a share from anybody, just the fact that there was people there that understood and I wasn't alone in my problems and my issues. Just being in that energy and amongst those people was enough to like, I physically felt a change. Like it was like somebody had been sitting on my shoulders and they got off my shoulders. I started tearing up and there was like a 180 spiritually inside me just from like the first 5 minutes in one of those meetings. So, and to your point, it's like, it's one of the most rewarding things for me is like when I was kind of like, I used to like drink Tuesday mornings and the person across from me like, I used to do that too. And then you kind of laugh about it, right? And you have this release of like laughter and you know what I mean? It's such a great way to transmutate this like shame that's inside of you otherwise. And it comes out in laughter and it's such a cool thing. It really is. So Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's really great to hear your story, get to know you more. Just great stuff. And I want to, so I have a idea to pitch to you as soon as we get off here, but if anybody's, wanting to reach out to you online, what's like the easiest way? So you do have your TikTok channel. We'll put everything in the show notes. What would be the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Oh my gosh, any way you want to, honestly. Lauren Howman 79 on TikTok. Let me make sure that's correct. Lauren Howman.
That's the one. Okay.
79 on TikTok.
Okay.
Lauren Howman, Lauren Rutledge Howman on Facebook. Lauren Howman on Instagram, which I'm really terrible, so don't go there. You can go there, but I'm very terrible about it.
Yes.
My email address is always open to anyone who's looking for support of any kind, and that's laurenhowman2@yahoo.com. And yeah, I mean, like my future plans are going to be just to help more people. I think that's why I was placed here, to go through some major BS, to be able to come out the other side and say, hey, I can help you too. Let me hold your hand and let me help you through this scary time. You don't have to do it alone, and you are strong enough to get out of this, whether it's addiction to food, whether it's addiction to alcohol, which are the two coaching sectors that I'm in, but also with the PSYCH-K and just continuing with my nursing. The reason I'm back in the hospital now is because I couldn't stay away.
Right.
But I didn't want to work 9 to 5 again every day.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, I'll just pick up a shift when you guys need me, and it fits in with my schedule. So
Beautiful.
So reach out if anybody has questions. I'm around, and Matt knows how to get a hold of me, of course, now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lauren, thank you so much for coming on. I imagine, well, it sounds like you, myself, and Chris are going to be getting something going on. So a little foreshadowing for the listeners will be coming soon, we'll say. And so it's going to be great working with you. And thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.